Chapter 20. Endure. A word like any other. It isn't the word itself that gives meaning, but the emotion behind it. The brothers Grimm understand this word more than most. They hold it as a symbol of their love and devotion to each other, out of a childhood so dark and grim that all they could do is endure. Endure pain, hardship, and sacrifice. Stare into the embodiment of fear and endure. Slade, being 3 years older, is the eldest. Stubborn and arrogant like older brothers, Slade took great pride in making Gabriel a man, as he often put it. Gabriel was naive and innocent. He admired his older brother greatly and despised him at the same time, blindly following Slade and always surprised when he would throw him under the proverbial bus when things took a nosedive. Their parents were typical of the slums in the dark city and took any job that came along to provide shelter and food. The boy's mother loved them deeply and made her own sacrifices for them. She understood what it meant to endure. Their father, for the most part, provided for his family, but oftentimes let blind ambition get the better of him. For each step forward, the boy's father would find a way to take 2 steps back. Each attempt was with good intentions, but the road to hell always needs good paving. It was a humid summer evening when Gabriel was 10 and Slade 13. The boys were playing in the slum park, as usual, picking up worn cans and placing them into a pyramid to dismantle with rocks. Slade was a tall, slender youth, standing almost 2 heads taller than his pudgy little brother. The older brother's light brown hair was pulled back in a braid, with the sides buzzed to the scalp. Their mother typically cut the boy's hair. As Slade grew older, he disdained the bowl cut she gave. Gabriel, on the other hand, was still too young to care and wore his mother's masterpiece proudly. Slade started doing some side work for a 3-finger gang member named Taft, netting him some extra cash for better clothing. His parents never asked. They thought it was better to stay ignorant. His black long-sleeve shirt formed fittingly over his thin frame. Slade's gray pants were a tad baggy, which slipped into his dark leather boots. Gabriel wore all of Slade's old hand-me-downs. His fat little body could no longer wear clothes for a 10-year-old. His mother was reduced to hemming Slade's worn clothes. His choice for today was a brown short-sleeved t-shirt and tight, worn denim pants. Each boy takes a turn lobbing rocks at the tin can pyramid. Slade is able to knock off the top one. Gabriel takes his turn and throws the jagged pebble with all his might. Unfortunately, it is nowhere close to the target.
"God damn, your aim is shit, fatty," Slade laughs, voice cracking as he points at his chubby brother.
"Shut up, Slade,"
Gabriel cries, crossing his pudgy little arms around his chest. The boys continue hurling rocks and insults when Taft makes his way from behind. About 10 yards out, Taft yells out to the brothers,
"Fellas, what's the haps? Holy shit, Gabe. That haircut makes you look like a chubby, limp dick. Tell your mom to stop cutting your hair."
"Screw you, Taft,"
Gabriel screams as Slade erupts into another cracking laugh. The chubby little boy storms off to a dilapidated swing set. He throws all of his weight as he sits in the cracked rubber seat and sulks. He swings back and forth, slouched over, grumbling from Taft's comment. Slade and Taft chuckle at Gabriel's actions to the swing set.
"What a putz,"
Taft remarks before looking back at Slade. The messy-haired 18-year-old pulls out a tin of smokes from his split-leather jacket. He offers one to Slade, who declines the offer. He lights the short cigarette, blowing the smoke in Slade's direction.
"Okay, so I got a job from Ninx. I think you're going to want to get in on this. It's an easy job with a big payday."
"Nice, I'm in. When is it?"
"Tonight, brother."
Taft, taking another drag.
Shit, I can't tonight. I'm watching Fat Ass. No, Biggie, bring the little pansy with us. I'm telling you, this job's cake.
Taft reaches in his pants pocket and pulls out a small gold nugget. Slade's hazel eyes widen as he salivates at the sight. This will be enough for the entire family to live off for almost a whole year. His eyes leave the gold payment and trek past Taft's shoulder, focusing on his little brother still pouting on the swing. He contemplates for a moment, weighing the possible outcomes of bringing his slow, clumsy brother with them. If their mother finds out, she's going to break a steel pipe over his ass. But this is an opportunity of a lifetime, Slade thinks. Greed wins out over logic. He nods to Taft.
All right, we're in. What's the plan? We're sneaking into the Coliseum basement. There's a package we are to pick up and take to the Nine Leaves Cafe right outside the slums. What the fuck, Taft? Not exactly an easy job. Especially when we're bringing dead weight with us, Slade proclaims, pointing at Gabriel. It's cool, man. There's a hole in the southern fence we can slip through. I already got it staked out.
Taft takes the last drag of his cigarette and flings the butt onto the gravel. He slips his arm over Slade's shoulders.
I'm telling you, we slip in and out. It is almost sundown. Drub Tides is playing the opening act tonight before the games. Everyone is going to have all eyes on them. I promise. No one will catch us.
Slade's thoughts drift to Drub Tides, a nomadic rock band. They haven't performed at the Coliseum in several years, mainly sticking to private events in the northern quadrant, where the upper crust live. The people living a better life, thanks to the enslavement of the lower-class civilians. He couldn't really blame them, though. If he had the opportunity to leave the slums and never look back, he would in a second. Slade looks to the western wall. The light of the sun is almost gone. They need to hurry to the Coliseum. The last ray vanishes from the walled city, acting as a watch for the citizens of Orgrimdir. The opening ceremony begins with a monologue describing the history of the city and their homage to Draconis, the last king of the New World and savior to them all from the vile creatures of the Wasteland. Music will then play with free bread and drink to all attendees. The general admission is free to all people. The higher-tiered balconies, referred to as skyboxes, are only for paying customers. They receive the royal treatment, with more drink variety and freshly prepared food. The menu consists of meat, with 2 to 3 vegetables. The most notable and commonly spoken story is of the Lycan War. A savage war between humans and werewolves, the conflict lasted for over a decade. At humanity's lowest point, General Claudius formed a covert alliance between the Merchants Guild and the Wastelanders, with Midland supplying scavenged ammunition. The Battle of the Bloody Oasis was the final stand which crippled the werewolves' defenses. A small covert team infiltrated from the north as the main army kept the beast's attention to the south. The team was able to slay their chieftain, Lord Lycan. Due to their tribal beliefs, the werewolves were forced to concede to General Claudius, viewing him as their new master. With the alliance and Lycans at his command, the general was able to usurp King Alexandros and crown himself King Draconis. All the people of the Dark City rejoiced and chanted his name for years to come, in hopes of a better life. Sadly, like all tyrants, nothing really changes but the face of the man the citizens must pay homage to. The poor stayed poor, the wealthy feasted and thrived off the backs of their lessers. The boys sprint from the playground and head north to the Coliseum. They are in a race against the setting sun. Slade and Taft keep in close proximity to each other, with Gabriel bringing up the far rear. The boys weave in and out of the passing civilians of the slums. Whores and pimps line the streets and intersections, with bars and strip clubs scattered on every corner. No one from the other 3 quadrants ventures into the slums unless there is a dire reason, typically to score the latest drug, Each quadrant polices themselves, much like a state, with Claudius being the deciding factor on quarrels between quadrants. 8 men and occasionally women are appointed to Dracona's council, 2 from each quadrant. They oversee the day-to-day affairs. The police, however, are owned by Claudius, allowing him to shut down any thoughts of the 4 districts usurping the throne. All 4 quarters converge together at the center, where the Colosseum stands. Everyone sets aside squabbles and feuds every night, coming together to enjoy the vicious entertainment the Monolith of Death offers. Screams and gunfire fill the air of the slums as the boys continue their dash against the falling sun. They take a shortcut east through a slender set of alleyways. The zap of blue arching energy jumps haphazardly across uninsulated wires from overhead, giving off the sound of a very large moth hitting a bug zapper. Taft and the brothers reach their destination and take a moment to gaze up at the wondrous Colosseum. The cheers from the packed crowd resound throughout the dusk sky. Taft points to a bit of wooded area next to the perimeter fence. The guards are too busy checking the remaining attendees in line to pay any mind. The 3 boys sneak to a patch of bushes. When they make it to the wooded haven, Slade slaps Gabriel on the back of the head to lower his wheezing. The plump boy fixes his bowl cut and silently shakes a fist at his older sibling. Slade pays no mind to the empty threat and looks to Taft. The older kid fights through the bushes, looking along the fence in search of the makeshift door. Once found, Taft spreads the pieces apart and ushers the brothers inside. Gabe crawls through the fence. As he turns his head left, Gabriel catches sight of a silhouette of a girl giving a guy fellatio. The young boy winces his face in disgust and scurries through the other side. Slade also saw the act and pushes Gabriel.
Don't worry, one day you'll like girls. That's just nasty.
You're such a pansy, Slade mocks, pushing his little brother again. Gabriel responds back with a shove. Taft snaps back at the brothers.
Hey, quit that fucking shit!
The siblings stop and follow Taft to a storm shelter door with a padlock near the base of one of the Colosseum's columns. Taft pulls a set of lockpicks from his pocket and thumbs the lock. The brothers stand watch. A monstrous roar erupts from the crowd inside the Colosseum, shocking all 3 boys. Drums burst out of the massive speakers that are secured to each column. Next enters a long guitar riff, letting the boys know Drub Tides has started the opening ceremony. They have about 5 to 10 minutes to snatch the package and get out. Taft unlocks the hatch, and the boys slip through, climbing down a ladder. They come to a narrow corridor with a door at the end. They sneak to the door and listen for any noises on the other side.
The coast sounds clear,
Taft says, checking the doorknob.
It's not locked.
They push the door open into a janitor's closet. Various buckets with mops and brooms line the left wall. A metal shelf hangs out on the right wall with several bottles and bins with unknown colored liquids. Straight across is another door. Taft repeats the following process of listening for noise on the other side. A set of footsteps move from left to right, then vanishing. He holds the position for a couple more seconds. No more footsteps. Taft opens the door. Taft pulls a sheet of crumpled paper from his pocket and scans the written contents. He looks back at Slade.
Okay, we go left down the hall. We'll pass 2 doors on the right. The next door should be on the left. That's our destination.
Got it, Slade whispers. Taft takes point and sprints down the concrete hallway. The brothers are hot on his heels, with Gabriel still bringing up the rear. They pass the first door and quicken the pace. The second door approaches. Suddenly it swings open, and Taft squeaks to a halt. Slade stops as well. Gabriel, however, plants his face in Slade's back, then falls flat on his butt. Voices creep through the door, with 2 shadows projecting on the opposite wall. Taft and Slade slide into an indentation of the wall, pulling Gabriel to them. The boys try with all their might to make themselves as thin as possible, holding their breath and hoping the men walk in the opposite direction. They listen to the men's conversation. The first man. "So who do you think will win the final bout, Lintic or Ragnar?" "Man, that's a tough one. Lintic did defeat 3 Lycans last week by himself," the second man replies. "Yeah, but Ragnar tipped the scale in the midnight tournament last month. Bested 4 of the Chalice champions." The first man scoffs at the remark and rebuts, "Yeah, but they weren't in their prime. I don't think Ragnar has the stamina to go more than 3 rounds with Lintic." The guards head in the opposite direction and turn right at the corner. The boys do their best to listen in on the remaining statistics each man whips out about the combatants, till nothing but their fainted footsteps are heard. The boys pry themselves from the wall and continue down the hallway until they reach the first door on the left. Taft again places his ear against the door. Once he thinks the coast is clear, the young thief uses his lockpicks. Taft cracks the door open, surveys the room, then ushers the brothers inside. The boys scurry into the next room, and Taft closes the door behind them. The boys enter what appears to be a security room. A table and chair are seated ahead of them, with a series of monitors in a 2x3 array. Each LCD panel displays different areas of the Coliseum. To the right sits a large vault. "Jackpot," Taft marvels, walking to the vault. Slade follows his friend while Gabriel inquisitively looks about the remainder of the room. The chubby little guy waddles over to the security monitors and stares for a moment at each screen. Nothing looks too interesting, so he takes his attention to the wall on the left. On the wall appears to be a set of peepholes with headphones hung next to them with a dial underneath. Gabriel walks over to them, but his small stature keeps him from peering through. He gets the idea to use the chair at the security table as a stand. He grabs it and wheels it to the first set of peepholes. Gabriel secures the seat against the wall and climbs it. At the perfect height, the curious boy flips open the hatch and peers through the 2 eye holes. Each looks into a room with a long wooden table in the middle, with several beautiful paintings on the far wall. One of them depicts a family on a hill, wrestling with each other as a warm breeze blows from the bottom of the mother's blouse. A soothing painting with soft colors that exude a sense of love and happiness. The plump boy gets lost in the artwork for a moment. The swinging of the door to the left breaks his gaze. He looks on as several men enter in nicely dressed suits. An older gentleman enters and sits at the head of the table on the right. The men in matching black suits huddle around the older gentleman. 3 men enter and sit on the opposite end of the table. Terror and surprise strike the pudgy boy as he immediately recognizes one of the men. It is his father, Mika. Gabriel can see the men's lips moving but cannot hear. He grabs the headphones, places them over his ears, and turns the dial. His father's voice sounds out in his tiny little eardrums. "Why have you called us here, Griffin?" The older man lets out a wheezing cough before answering. "Mika, you and your boys have done an excellent job for us this past year. You helped churn out a hefty profit, and for that you'll receive a sizable bonus. However, I've been informed about a proposition you turned down from the Three Fingers gang." Griffin pauses to light a cigar. He continues, "I need you to honor this deal and take it. The Baron alone can crush what we've worked so hard to build." Mika doesn't hesitate as his voice stutters in anger. "I will not take this proposition. Would any of you? The very thought sickens me. I served you well and compliantly, Griffin. I have helped you gain more territory in the slums. From one father to another, I humbly ask for your protection." Griffin sits in quiet contemplation. One of the suits leans in and whispers to the old mob boss. He nods to the suit and gestures him away. "Okay, Mika. You have my protection. You have worked off your previous debt to me, but I have no choice but to add another 30% to the debt." 30%? Mika exclaims, jumping to his feet. The suits surrounding Griffin move in closer to their boss, with a hand going for a concealed firearm. I will take the bonus as your payment. That is the best I can do. That's my offer, Mika. Take it or leave it. The response from Gabriel's father is washed out by the blaring sound of an alarm. He snaps his head back at Slade and Taft. Opening the vault door triggered an alarm. Taft reaches for the small box in the vault and takes off for the door. Slade runs after his friend, yelling at Gabriel to follow. The chubby boy drops his butt on the chair and slides his feet to the ground, hastening after his brother. The three boys exit the security room and backtrack the way they came. They reach the janitor's room, closing the door and locking the deadbolt behind them before heading up the ladder, back into the night. The sound of the crowd deafens the raging alarm from below. They sneak to the fence and slide through. From there, the boys split up. Taft takes off east with the box in hand. Gabriel and Slade sprint back into the slums and don't stop running until they reach their home. The boys rush into the tiny house where their mother is sitting by the fireplace knitting a small shirt for the expected baby. She smiles at the boys and asks them about their night. Each reply with, "Fine," going into no further details. Gabriel looks at his mother for a moment, desperately wanting to tell her everything that transpired. Doing so would incur her wrath on Slade, which would sever any possibility of a brotherly relationship between them. Instead, he goes in for a deep embrace, telling his mother that he loves her. If he only knew what the near future holds, he would never let go. The night plays out normally. The boys eat a late dinner, then wash up for bed. Their room is up a ladder, overlooking the living room. Slade drifts off to sleep. Gabriel lays in the dead of night, replaying the events over and over in his mind, especially the scene with his father. The dreary dreams of the night start to overtake the portly boy. Suddenly he snaps up from the slam of the front door. His father returns home, rushing into the bedroom and waking their mother. Gabriel peers down into the candlelit living room, eavesdropping on the conversation. He only hears murmurs. Mika comes back into the living room with a bag, frantically putting clothes and valuables in it. Gabriel's mother stammers into the room, exhaustedly trying to get answers. The only words he can say is, "I was betrayed." Gabriel shoves Slade several times to rouse the deep sleeper. Coming to, quite agitated, Slade snaps, "What the hell? Why'd you wake me?" "Something's going on," Gabriel answers, pointing down at the argument in the living room between their parents. Mika settles his nerves for a moment to coherently talk to his wife. "You gotta get the boys and leave the slums. No place is safe." "What's going on?" Mika questions with tears flooding down her face. Mika pulls 3 tickets from his back pocket and hands it to her. "The train is leaving at midnight. You and the boys need to take it to Midland." "Why?" "Please, Mia, you have to trust me." Mia nods at her husband and hugs him. He calls out to the boys, "Slade, Gabriel, come on down, boys. I know you're awake." Slade pokes his head out first. "Everything all right?" "No," Mika replies, filling a bag with food. "You and Gabe grab some clothes. You're leaving on the train tonight." He nods to his father and vanishes back into their room to pack. Slade finishes preparing his bag first and descends the ladder. Gabriel takes a few clothes and his stuffed animal, Mr. Bear. As the boy turns to the ladder, the front door explodes open with several armored guards with assault rifles pouring in. Mika and Mia extend their hands and kneel on the ground. The defeated father motions Slade to do the same thing. The captain of the guard is the last to enter the secured house. He proceeds to read Mika his rights, stating that he is being put under arrest for conspiring to assassinate King Claudius. Mia screams in terror, knowing what the outcome will be. Both parents are cuffed and hauled out of the house. They are placed in different vehicles. Both cars drive off when a dark van pulls up. A guard gestures the boys to head to the back of the van. Another guard opens both doors as they reach it. The vehicle is cold and empty as each child sits on the bench and is then cuffed to a rail. Gabriel grasps Mr. Bear as the van doors shut. As quickly as the guards came, they are gone. The engine of the van fires up and darts off through the slums streets to an old building in the third quadrant, west of the slums. The van screeches to a halt in front of a 3-story building. The passenger guard unshackles the frightened boys and drops them off at the front step. He hops back into the van and it peels away. Slade and Gabriel stand there in shock, befuddled by what just happened. The front doors from the building open, and 2 individuals emerge. One is an old, frail woman, whose light ebony skin looks surprisingly smooth for her age. Her black hair is slicked back and tied in a poofy bun. A long, dark dress covers up any other defining features. The man following behind is muscular, with black dreads clashing against his wide shoulders with each step down the stairs.
"Good evening, boys. Looks like you had a long night."
Neither boy answers the old woman. They just stare at her with fear. She smiles at them and continues her welcoming speech.
"Your parents have gone against the king. Therefore, you are now in my care until you've been sold to properly pay your debts to the crown. Any questions?"
Slade fights back the terror and nervously speaks to their new guardian.
"What's going to happen to them?" "Well, my boy, your father will have to pay his debt with his life. He will no doubt be sent to the Colosseum and ripped limb from limb until death. Your mother will be sold as well to help pay the debt to the crown. She's pregnant, which won't fetch a good price. She will be purged of the bastard seed and then sold."
Tears begin to swell in Gabriel's eyes at the thought of his parents' inevitable fate. His lips start to quiver with the first set of tears trekking down his face. The old woman scowls at Gabriel, then slaps him across his fat cheeks.
"That's enough of that. The die is cast, boy. You take this lot in life and you endure it. Make you stronger or kill you dead. The choice is yours."
The seed is planted in each boy that night. Endure. Whatever came next would either kill them or make them stronger. On more than one occasion, they would have gladly taken death. The 4 go up the steps and into the building. They were given a quick meal of oats and goat milk, then a bath. They are to look presentable to their new potential master. The old woman is gracious enough to put the brothers in a cell together, knowing that this would be their last night with each other for a very long time. She even let Gabriel keep Mr. Bear. Slade held his brother the remainder of the night, as Gabriel's round face stayed buried in his chest. The younger brother went through many cycles of crying himself to sleep. As Gabriel would drift off, he'd be brought back to reality from a nightmare. The cycle would start over again, crying himself to sleep in his brother's arms. Slade fights back the tears. Gabriel must see the strength in him and know that they will get through this. Their bond will grow stronger. They will endure together. Again, the word takes root in his psyche, and for the first time in his life, he loves his brother with a deepening passion. Morning came too soon for the brothers, as they, along with other children, are brought to the basement of the 3-story orphanage. The elder woman flips a switch, revealing a small wooden stage in the center of the basement. Her braided bodyguard makes the children stand shoulder to shoulder, as erect as possible. The children all stand for close to an hour as men and women come down the stairs. Each person takes great interest in the children, surveying them like cattle. A well-dressed blonde woman takes quite a liking to Slade, but settles on the younger boy to his right. Slade's eyes carry over to a broad, heavy-set man in the corner, eyeing both he and his brother the entire time. His gaze is deep and cold, blowing out heavy smoke from a cigar. The gentleman strokes his thick brown mustache, never taking his eyes off Gabriel. The poor pudgy boy just stands there, holding Mr. Bear with his head sunken deep in his chest. After 2 of the children are purchased, the mustached gentleman moves over to Slade and Gabriel. He smiles and kneels down to the portly boy, taking his thick finger and positioning it under Gabriel's chin. He flips the boy's head up and scans his pudgy face. Letting go, the fellow walks over to the elder woman and hands her a small pouch. They shake hands, and her ebony-skinned guardian walks over to Gabriel, guiding him to the exit. Slade snaps, sprinting after his brother. "No, you can't take him!" The guardian backhands Slade across the face, launching him across the room. As soon as Slade hits the ground, he claws back to his feet and charges at the towering guard. Slade leaps up and clings onto the man's back, grasping a handful of greasy braids, and yanks. The bodyguard moans, then flings Slade over his shoulder. The boy crashes into the wall. Again, he hastens to his feet and charges. The ebony man is ready this time. Slade dives head first, but the man grabs him by the neck and starts to squeeze. Gabriel screams in a mix of fear and frenzy, kicking and clawing the man's leg. Gabriel's buyer looks on, still taking long draws from his cigar. A wide grin forms over his face, revealing stained teeth. He leans over to his retainer and whispers. The thin-framed retainer, dressed much like the men Gabriel saw at the Coliseum, walks over to the elderly woman and hands her another pouch. She shakes the leather bag with her shrill, wrinkly fingers, coveting it. The orphan master calls out to her bodyguard, "Let him go! The Baron purchased the other brother as well." The man acknowledges his mistress's command and lets the sibling go. Slade drops to the ground, coughing profusely as he fights for air. Gabriel scrambles to his brother's side. Slade catches his breath, and Baron's retainer pushes the brothers out the door into the early morning air. They head from the back of the orphanage through a dank alleyway and onto the street. In front of the boys is an old gray van with a glossy black car parked in front of it. The retainer opens the car door for the Baron, who eases into the seat. The door closes and the sedan speeds off. The Baron's retainer walks to the back of the van. He opens the doors and whistles for the boys to enter. With their heads low, the brothers do as they're told and enter. A bench rests on either side. Slade sits on the left bench, while Gabriel sits across from his big brother. The doors slam shut and lock. The engine sputters to life and takes off down the street, turning at the intersection. The boys sit motionless, lost in their own thoughts as the van sputters to their new home. The ebb and flow of emotions leave the boys speechless, with the events of the last 12 hours replaying over and over. Gabriel is the first to break the silence, still hugging Mr. Bear with all of his might. "Slade, where are they taking us?" "I don't know." "Who was that well-dressed man with the mustache? He scares me." "I don't know that either." "Are they going to kill us?" Slade looks up at his brother, tears welling up and cascading down his chubby cheeks. Slade soothes his voice, trying to calm his petrified brother. Hey, baby bro, they aren't going to kill us. That man wouldn't have bought us just to kill us. We will have to work in a mine or field to pay off Father's blood debt." "You promise?" "You bet. And besides, we will be together." Gabriel wipes the remaining tears before squeezing Mr. Bear again. The little boy looks back at his big brother and whispers, "I love you, Slade." Slade smiles back. "You too, little brother." The van continues its journey through the early morning on its way to the second quadrant, north of Quadrant 3. This region is called the Business District. The van passes the Coliseum, continuing around the perimeter. The vehicle comes to a halt in front of a large brick building with 2 chimneys protruding out the back, rising up to the heavens. Black smog ascends out of the thick circular chimney. The Baron's slick-dressed minion unlocks the door and swings it open. He yanks Gabriel out of the van, hurrying him to the old building.
Slade jumps out in pursuit of his brother. Gabriel and the retainer come to the entrance when 3 men exit, moving in their direction. The servant moves a hand through his blonde hair as he slings Gabriel to one of the men. "Brand the boy." The smaller man grabs hold of Gabriel and nods. One of the other 2 men points to Slade, who's hastening in their direction. "What about that one?" "He's to become an enforcer," the retainer answers with a grin. "Make sure to give him a warm reception." The retainer leaves the boys with the men and vanishes through the entrance glass doors. The smaller, less intimidating man grabs Gabriel by the hand and drags him around the left side of the building. The little brother screams, "Slade, help me!" Slade makes a beeline to Gabriel, but is blocked by the other 2 more menacing-looking thugs. Both men are well-dressed in dark gray suits with their hair slicked back. Slade tries to veer around them, but is met with a left hook to the gut, knocking the wind out of him, and he collapses. Each man takes his turn punching and kicking the defenseless boy. Slade's last vision before succumbing to the onslaught is his little brother flailing his arms and legs, fighting to get free, before he vanishes with his captor behind the building. The stout and brawny man, wearing a white button-down shirt and slacks, pulls Gabriel by his shirt collar to a set of stairs in the middle of the building. The man has had enough with the younger brother's squirming. He spins the fat boy around and backhands him across the face. "Any more from you and I'll slam your head against the wall. I don't care you belong to the Baron. I'm sure that's better than what's coming to you." Gabriel concedes to the man, shaking his scab-covered fist. They continue to the stairs, going down the steps and through the steel door. The 2 come into a long, barely lit hallway. They follow the metal pipes running along the ceiling, then switching to the corridor on the left, then an immediate right. The hall opens into a smelting room. Boys of all ages, heights, weights, and races are working at various stations. Several large drums move overhead, full of molten steel, and a large furnace sits in the middle of the room. Both Gabriel and his handler begin to sweat from the heat. They make their way along the west wall to a small line with several boys, each child looking as morose as Gabriel. The little boy takes a moment to look at Mr. Bear, slowly stroking the top of its head. Softly he whispers to Mr. Bear, "Don't be scared. Everything will be all right. I'm the big brother now." The line moves fairly fast, with cries of pain screeching from the front. Each boy is branded with a specific mark, dictating their job and master. When the next boy comes to the front, they are seated in a chair, and the handler tells the brander which mark they should receive. The stink of burning flesh becomes quite apparent as Gabriel inches closer and closer to his fate. As he comes to the front of the line, he's corralled over to a chair. The brander is an older teenage boy, sullen like all the others. He's dressed head to toe in smelting gear, a long, thick apron with insulated leather gloves reaching all the way to his elbows. Gabriel can barely make out the young man's pale complexion through the thick layer of soot. Several branding prods are laying inside a forge. The tips are fiery red, each with a letter signifying the master's insignia. The young man robotically calls out to the handler, "Brand?" "Baron." The brander's emotionless face freezes in time and looks back at the handler. His finely pressed shirt is drenched with sweat, his face devoid of color at the thought of this pudgy boy's luck. A sense of pity washes over the brander's face, changing his callous demeanor to that of sympathy as he reaches for the metal cattle prod. "Pull the boy's shirt up." Another teenage slave binds Gabriel's wrists to the arm of the chair and lifts his drenched nightshirt. He whimpers as the heat from the steel prod begins to toast his fatty flesh. The brander sears an elegantly curved B on the left side of his chest, right above his heart. Gabriel wails in pain as the symbol chars into his young flesh. The rod is pulled away and the brander grabs a handful of white powder and throws it on the wound. The other slave wrangler yanks down Gabriel's shirt and loosens the wrist straps. The little boy's handler pulls him from the seat, and they continue to a metal door behind the chair. They pass through and descend a small set of stairs and turn to a wide corridor with locked wooden doors. He escorts Gabriel to the middle door on the right, unlocks it, and tosses him in.
"You'll receive your job sometime tomorrow."
The handler closes the door behind him. The locking deadbolt echoes throughout the hallway. Gabriel is all alone in his cell. A pile of hay with 2 blankets make up his bed in the northeast corner, and an adjacent wooden bucket is his toilet. A halogen bulb, barely hanging onto life, illuminates the tiny cell for the boy and Mr. Bear. He squeezes his ratty stuffed animal, crawls over to the hay, and passes out from complete exhaustion. Time passes as the boy dreams of his parents and Slade. The sound of the deadbolt unlocking startles him. His handler has returned. He's had the opportunity to change into another set of finely pressed clothes. He escorts Gabriel to the second floor to a bathhouse. Here he is cleaned and put in a long white nightshirt that stops just at his knees. He's given another set of folded clothes, a short-sleeved shirt, a pair of dark pants, thick wool socks, and worn leather shoes. He's escorted back to his cell where he is greeted with a warm plate of food and a mug of milk. Gabriel takes the time to enjoy the meal, even though his only thought is shoveling it all down his throat in one massive bite. The fear of the unknown scratches at him, not knowing his fate or his brother's. He finishes every last bite and neatly sets the cup and spoon in the plate, placing it at the corner of the door. The boy spends the next several hours on his bed, consoling Mr. Bear, reassuring the stuffed animal.
"Don't worry, Mr. Bear. Slade will come for us. I know it. We'll be long gone from here."
A small fissure near the bed intermittently whistles a cool draft. The mind randomly drifts to his family. His face tightens as he fights off the tears. He clenches the teddy bear.
"Don't cry, Mr. Bear. Mama and Papa are in heaven now."
Remembering his mother's smile and loving caress is too much to bear. Gabriel cries uncontrollably into his tattered brown pillow. Fatigue sets in once again, and the young boy drifts back into restless dreaming. Again, the clank of the deadbolt springs Gabriel back from the dead. The wooden door opens. A shadowy silhouette stands in the archway. He rubs his eyes as the figure emerges from the shadows. A kind, rugged face looks down at the boy in his itchy haysack. The guard is clad in a hard leather chest piece over a light gray shirt. A long, dark sash wraps around his waist, draping down his right denim pant leg. He smiles at the boy and puts his hand out. To Gabriel's surprise, it's a cookie. The chubby little prisoner gets up and cautiously moves to the guard's hand. The grizzled jaw of the guard twitches slightly as he nods with acceptance. "It's yours. Go ahead." Gabriel grabs the cookie and bites down hard, not expecting it to be so moist, almost taking a chunk out of his tongue. "Good?" the guardsman asks. Gabriel nods, shoving the rest of the delicious treat into his fat cheeks. The guard places his hand on Gabriel's shoulder and guides him to the door. The young prisoner walks through the doorway and down the wall with the guard at his side. "My name is Jericho. What's your name, young man?" He answers with his mouth still full of cookie.
"Gabriel, nice to meet you."
"Likewise." Jericho directs Gabriel to continue down the hall and up the stairs. Time is lost down in the lower levels of the textile factory due to lack of windows. Gabriel asks,
"What time is it?"
Jericho, "The time is 10 o'clock exactly."
"Have you seen my brother?"
Gabriel inquires as they traverse up the stairwell. "No, I haven't. What's his name?"
"Slade. He's 13 and about this tall."
the little boy replies, motioning his left hand outstretched above his head.
His hair is lighter than mine and longer. He usually has it pulled back into a braid with the sides shaved. It looks stupid if you ask me, but it's his hair.
I'll keep an eye out. Gabriel starts to ramble a bit during the climb up, partially out of fear and somewhat because there is a sense of safety with Jericho. His eyes are warm and almost loving. Gabriel hasn't seen that since he's been here. A heavy sadness paints across these walls and on the face of the boys. Jericho hands him another cookie from his pocket, and Gabriel devours it, going into greater detail about Slade and some about Taft, especially how much he dislikes Taft, and to a point blaming the boy for their current misfortune. The two enter a door on the 4th floor. It has a look of a nice hotel with red carpet and golden trim. A crest is engraved on each door they pass. Jericho stops at the door with the same engraving as Gabriel's brand, a curved B. Jericho kneels before Gabriel and puts a soft hand on his shoulder.
I'll hold Mr. Bear for you. He doesn't need to see this. Now I want you to think of the most magical and comforting place. Keep that place in your mind and don't ever let it go.
Okay.
Gabriel hands him the ratty, stuffed animal, unsure what Jericho is rambling on about. He takes a moment to think about his most favorite of memories. Jericho opened the door and gently guided Gabriel into the room. The door closed on the young boy's innocence that night, opening to a darker world and the beginning of his dark rage. The brand was a symbol of Baron's ownership of the boy, and he was not to be contaminated by anyone else. The abuse went on for months. One dark and lonely night, Gabriel sits holding a knife he stole from the kitchen that he kept hidden in Mr. Bear. After one of the typical endings to his night, still covered in Baron's sweat, Gabriel pulls the knife from his best friend, deciding to end the torture, to end his life. The only problem is finding the quickest and least painful way. The battered boy takes several minutes debating whether to thrust it into his neck or slice his wrists. Fear of the act and the thought of death became unbearable. At that moment, fate decides to intervene. Gabriel hears a familiar voice calling to him. He at first thought it only his imagination, but the voice came closer to his cell door.
"Gabriel, are you there?"
Slade asks through the door. Gabriel's eyes widen and tear up as he scrambles to the door.
"Slade? Is that you?"
Gabriel asks, bursting out into excited sobs. The brothers reunite, but for only a short instant.
"Gabe, I can't stay long. The guard will be here soon. I found you, and that's all that matters. Where have you been?" "I can't get into that here. There is something I have to do before I can get us out of here. I met someone that is willing to help us, but I must go with him first. Please don't leave me, Slade. I can't stay here. Please don't go."
Gabriel sobs profusely at the thought of his brother leaving now.
"He's coming. I'll be back for you, little brother. I promise. No, please, don't leave me, Slade, please."
Gabriel begs softly as he claws at the door. And just as suddenly as Slade arrived, he was gone. Gabriel's left again to rot in this tormented world. However, a new resolve begins to take shape, a hope that he has not felt for many months. He stores hope and fear together, manifesting a new emotion, a much stronger and darker passion, a feeling that will save and haunt him until his death. Rage. The young boy will soon receive his vengeance on the lustful Baron, but not this night, and not yet. For now, he must continue to endure.